big confusion about N95 masks with valves now is that the Ministry of Health says that they are detrimental to the entire purpose of social distancing and helping the prevention of COVID-19. Now, what are we talking about? N95 masks have, of course, become very popular. All of us have to wear masks, and these are supposed to have more layers which will protect you from any germs or viruses, and in this case, the COVID-19 impacting you. Now, you must have seen several people walking around and even in stores, masks with little valves on them, like an opening. These are not to be used by the general public, now says the Ministry of Health. Now, what is the reason for this? Why are these masks supposed to be unsafe? And if they are, why are they still being sold? We're going to understand a bit more on this with our top expert. But first, let's listen in to what the Health Ministry has said at its daily briefing just today.
तो जो एविडेंस आ रहा है वो ये कहता है कि जब आप वैल्व वाला मास्क पहनते हैं तो आप स्वयं तो सुरक्षित हैं, लेकिन जो आप एक्सहेल कर रहे हैं, इफ़ यू आर अ एसिम्प्टोमेटिक पर्सन, देन द प्रोपेंसिटी ऑफ दैट इन्फेक्टिंग अदर्स इज़ देयर. दिस इज़ ए इवॉल्विंग सिचुएशन. अगर कुछ और तथ्य हमारे सामने आएंगे और हमें ये आवश्यकता लगेगी कि इसमें कुछ संशोधन करने की ज़रूरत है तो हम करेंगे. वर्तमान स्थिति यही है जो हमने अपनी गाइडलाइंस में बताई है.
Okay, Dr. Sanjiv Badhwar, head of the ENT service at Kokilaben, Dhirubhai Ambani Hospital, joins me now to explain this further. Dr. Badhwar, the question that comes to mind is that same notification from the Health Ministry says it's okay for medical professionals to use this. Wouldn't the same logic apply that this mask is a one-way protection and could potentially allow an asymptomatic carrier of COVID-19 to infect the air around him or her?
Good evening. Actually, this is a notification which has come at the right time. As you've noticed, of late, you find people walking around with fancy masks, some wearing two valves, some one. So this is extremely dangerous in the current context. Firstly, I would like to explain why it is dangerous, and then we can get into a little more details. So basically what happens is all these valves are what you call non-return valves. So when the individual is wearing a mask and he breathes in, air is filtered, he's safe. But when he breathes out, the valve opens and you're exposed to air which may be contaminated. So with the result, you're keeping yourself safe but not your surroundings. Now, these masks are actually designed for use in the industry, where people are working in polluted areas, dusty areas like cement, asbestos, we're working on things, drilling, machinery, so that you keep yourself safe and you breathe out. But in the current context of a viral pandemic, these masks are not to be used. They are unsafe. And the word used by the Ministry of Health is inappropriate use by the lay public. This is because there are certain valved respirators which are used by healthcare professionals in the OR, but they are designed in a different way. But not to confuse the general populace, firstly, N95 masks are safe. I would just like to clarify, what is an N95 mask? Basically, N95 is an efficiency rating from the National Institute of Occupational Health and Safety. That means the mask filters out 95% of non-oil particles larger than 0.3 microns. In the current context, both the CDC and the WHO have recommended that because there's a shortage of such masks, these should be directed towards people who really need them, that is, healthcare professionals, those who are immune compromised, and the recent recommendations are individuals more than 60 years of age with some comorbidities. For the general populace who are not at risk, they recommend the use of a layered cloth mask or a surgical mask.
Yeah, Dr. Badhwar, just to understand, the fact is that these masks are widely available. They are in every medical store. So the general populace doesn't really know whether it's unsafe or not safe for others, and the reason they are being preferred is because people wearing them feel that they have a easier way to breathe rather than another mask. So my question to you is, if there is any indication that usage of this mask can actually spread coronavirus further, shouldn't they just be stopped from being sold at this point?
The government needs to take very strict measures. And the reason why somebody feels comfortable with these masks is, if you use an N95 mask with a tight fit, like we do when we operate, you feel claustrophobic. At times, your oxygen saturation may go down. And when you have a valve, it's easier to use it. So your comfort level is more. But like I said, these are for industrial use. And if necessary, strong steps should be taken by the government and ban the use and sale of these masks.
But Dr. Badhwar, it still doesn't solve the problem of those needing an N95 mask. Like you mentioned, now the elderly with or those above the age of 60 with comorbidities should also use an N95, and they will also require a valve. So, the question is actually broader. There is not enough information out there about which mask is okay, which is not. People go and pick up what they find the most easiest and the most convenient. Do you think there needs to be now some streamlining about this, and how will we ensure that there are N95 masks which are easier to use in terms of breathing? More and more people will have to use them for longer now, even beyond medical professionals.
Okay, so basically, again, I would like to clarify, N95 masks are safe. They are used where indicated, but the use of N95 masks with valves is not indicated in the current context because we are dealing with a pandemic. So if somebody needs to use an N95 mask, he may not be a medical professional. He will have to use an N95 mask without a valve, period.
Okay. And what about those who require N95 masks for longer periods of time, or who feel safer using an N95 mask for longer period of time? Can they go ahead and use them without valves? Is there a need to ensure that the right products are now available in the market, because there are such a huge explosion of suppliers suddenly?
Okay, ma'am. There are 3 or 4 major manufacturers in our country who make N95 masks, and it is a matter of pride that our Indian manufacturers have set up large facilities and are ramping up productions. Now, these masks, once made, have to be certified. The Indian certifying agency is CITRA. Then you have NIOSH, you have the FDA. So they have to go through a certification process to establish their safety. Now, the NIOSH certification takes about 5 to 6 months. So most of the manufacturers who joined in later in the fray are undergoing trials. But the CITRA certification and the FDA certification is a little faster. So firstly, you need to have the right mask. You need to check that they're certified by the agencies I've mentioned. Next, how do you use a mask? Is it the right mask? Those questions have to be answered by the general practitioner who is treating you, medical professionals, and the industry at large. So we would look upon the Ministry of Health to put out guidelines for the general populace. So essentially, I would like to again highlight the CDC and the WHO have done a lot of work on it, and they have now streamlined the use of masks. They've gone to the extent of saying that if everyone uses a mask and maintains social distancing, you can really go a long way in controlling the spread of COVID-19. So essentially, a 3-layered cloth mask is safe enough for the general populace to be used. For those who are immune compromised, who are 60 years plus, they recommend the use of an N95 mask. When these individuals first use an N95 mask, if they face any difficulty, they should meet their general practitioner who would apprise them into the correct use of the mask. Sometimes even an oxygen saturation is checked to see whether they're breathing comfortably, and then advise them whether they can use it for long hours, do they need to give breaks, or they need to use a simpler mask, which will not cause them any problems.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Badhwar, for coming on to the show and explaining to us, what the whole controversy and what the whole question is about. So don't go around buying those masks, N95 or otherwise, right? Any mask with valves is a problem, Dr. Badhwar?
Yes, ma'am. Any mask with a valve is not to be bought. N95 masks are safe when used properly, but without a valve.
Okay, so next time you see those fancy masks with one nozzle or valve or two, don't go for them. They may be keeping you safe, but they may definitely do harm to others. And if it's so clear, I think it's time sooner or later that there is regulation brought in to make sure that something that could be harmful is not sold in the first place. Thank you so much, Dr. Badhwar. We'll take a very short break on the show, but we keep our focus on coronavirus right here on the India Development Debate. After the break, you will hear from Adar Poonawala. My colleague Abha Bakaya has spoken to him. He is the man from Serum Institute of India who will be working with AstraZeneca and Oxford to produce the vaccine in India when the time is right. You will hear from him after this break.